It is interesting to be here with all of very good and very resourceful persons this evening. First of all, I would like to, let me share my presentation. Yes, first of all, it is interesting that everybody try to present about the data. And it seems to us the data, and there are many differences on the data. Like the first speakers, Bu Maria, explaining that the foreign worker in ASEAN approximately about 12 millions, and then also she also saying that it's what 11.8 million, and my presentation it should be 12 million, not 2 million actually. This is reflecting that the data itself it is still debatable because every single country, every single institutions not try to reveal the exact data about the migrant workers. So we can understand why and then who responsible about the data, why they are cannot reveal the exact data, and so on and so forth. Because as already stated by the previous speakers, that many peoples, including the institutions, companies, and even the government agencies, not to reveal the exact data about the working foreign workers. This is the interesting point that maybe being a journalist, our colleague who are joined this program can try to collect some more information and dig more into this kind of facts. And then second thing that I would like to share, which is actually similar to other our previous speakers, is the fact that in the ASEAN countries, the economic development, economic growth is very different. So the countries like in mine, on the table, it is clearly stated, among the 10 ASEAN countries, at least 7 member countries, it can be called as country of origins, while 3 of them, like Singapore, and then Brunei, and Malaysia, actually the country of destination. But for Malaysia, at the same time, become both country of origin and also country of destination. And through this table, we can see the role of foreign workers towards the economy of the country of origins. To remittance, we can see actually in many data and many resources. We can double check whether in the World Bank or maybe in the national economic institutions. So our colleague from any of the media and the local media can try to double check the remittance of each of the foreign workers in its own country. Now we are touching on the medium and long-term factors that will help shape labor migration in Asia. Of course, everybody already explaining about the impact of the pandemic during the COVID-19. Almost every country are facing similar problem. And now the economic recovery become the tagline of every single country. So that's why, because of the economic growth, economic development slowing down, then of course, the unemployment rate in every single country also going down. So this is one of the challenges by most of the country that, of course, the country of origin of the foreign workers. So this is one of the most important. And another factor is the use of technology. We are all aware that most of the country try to use the technology rather than to labor-intensive companies. By using technology in many countries like in Indonesia, in Vietnam, Cambodia, and so on and so forth. So it will improve the number of unemployment. So those who have less skill, then they have to find out another jobs outside of their own country. And of course, the sluggishness of the economic growth and developments because of many situations, especially during the pandemic, and push every peoples who are less skilled and unemployed to go everywhere. This is the interesting fact. And the last factor is the political instability or insecurity in the country of origins. Maria and also Masid already explaining that the situation in Myanmar right now push everybody in this country try to find out a better job outside of their own country. And foreign workers actually in some country, it can be called a development engine. Just take an example in Malaysia, especially in the palm oil sector in Malaysia. From the data, you can see that many percentage of agriculture sector become source of the GDP of Malaysia. And especially for the palm oil, also supporting and providing many percentage of the GDP. And maybe Maria later on can share with us that in Sabah and Malaysia, the people who are working in palm oil sector, almost all of them are from Indonesia and from Philippines. And it's almost unreplaceable by any nationals. So it can become part of the development engine. But as already discussed before, the treatment, the way the receiving country treat and look after of the foreign workers in those sector, there are a lot of questions on that. So there are a lot of questions on that one. And of course, Maria already explaining many examples about the cases. On the palm oil sector, there are thousands or maybe tens of thousands cases actually down there. A point for discussion, contract. If we are talking about the contract of the foreign workers, especially in the palm oil or maybe in the manufacturers, it only stated only 2 years, while by nature, palm oil plantations, it takes until 20 or 30 years. So this is not, can be considered just based on the contract, which is only 2 years. While palm oil should be taken care until 30 years. So this is a problem and also the challenge faced by the companies who are working in this sector. And at the same time, the regulations on employing foreign workers, of course, not until specifically stated until 25 or 30 years. So this is one of them. And the people who are working in specific sector in a certain country, it's also can be called irreplaceable. As mentioned before, for example, domestic workers, caregiver, manufacturing and construction, even food server, cleaners, healthcare, public transport. It's not easy to find out the replacement from local people or even from other countries. And of course, the way the local government, the way the receiving country or destination country in treating them, it should be much more better compared to the previous, that is rising many cases and of course many critics. And of course, we also see some problems, some challenges in this point. Specifically in this sector, there are points for further discussions because already mentioned before, the high cost of employing foreign workers. And of course, it will become a prolonged and uncertainties about salary cuts. And it's also happened not only workers from ASEAN countries, but also from other nationals. And then unclear cost structure, minimum wage versus free market, and then work-related dispute that end up with criminal accusations. There are a lot of problems in this specific sector. And we are all quite aware, actually, all of these problems rise because of the excessive role of the recruitment or placement agency, which is private sector. And in many countries, including in the destination or the origin country, actually the companies call, the agency call companies. So the way they treat foreign workers, not quote unquote, not human. They just company. If they call company, it's like goods. This is actually the interesting point of view. All of the journalists can dig further, can explore further to try to find out the root of the problem and also write good and maybe propose to the government or to the institutions who are responsible for that better policy. And then the availability of job versus unemployment. This is actually related to the economic downturns because of the economic growth and economic development faced by the pandemic. So every country facing similar situations about the economic recovery and of course the unemployment. And of course there are many choices, whether it is in the origin country or destination country, in choosing the sector that is much more labor intensive or maybe capital intensive. Maybe the one of the alternative is small and medium enterprises that can be chosen to accommodate more unemployment. And then coordination between national legislation, policy, alignment, and intergovernmental collaboration platform. As already mentioned by Mahi, that the regional arrangements within the ASEAN, even the Mahi underlined that ASEAN's become like the toothless tiger, because in this case, specifically about the migrant workers, the instruments, just instruments. There is no legally binding scheme that can be applied by every country in this specific sector. But at least in certain origin country, there's special agency that designed and established for the purpose of taking care of these issues. For instance, in Philippines, they have special institutions, and in Indonesia, also special institute on that. And of course, it should be bilateral cooperations between country of origin and the destination country. As I mentioned before, the example for the Indonesia, we have special agency for the protection of Indonesian migrant workers, while Philippines have Philippine Overseas Employment Administrations. Of course, in the country like Cambodia, Myanmar also has its own specific agency. How far the agencies can really taking care of those migrants who are in this category can be protected by this agency. So our colleague from every single country can make try to have a kind of further studies and then can review the outcome. Of course, the preparations of the migrant workers because before they going abroad, that's the most important part. Otherwise, they will face many problems since the beginning on. And we can discuss further later on about the unprepared workers, less skilled, healthy, and also the responsibility of the private company that arrange the placement. The responsibility of the private sector, and many countries call it companies or agencies on this matter. And we have a lot of problems because the responsibility of the private company is very minimum. And at the end, they just rely on the government. And of course, with many limitations and also the specific arrangement which is not in place, the role of the representative, foreign representative in every each country is also very limited. Now I would like to touch on the issue or maybe the terminology that is not really correct, but it's always around quite some time. Issues like illegal, undocumented, and unprocedural. Maybe some people mix up between those three wording, but let me share because not every scheme from one country to another can be applied 100% similar to others. For instance, the terminology of unprocedural, it's actually applied for Indonesians to Malaysia and from Indonesian to Singapore. Why? Because those two countries accepting free visa scheme, tourist visa, entering this country, and at the end can be switched to become working permit. So that's why it is not easy for everybody to reveal the real data of the foreign workers, either descending country or origin country or destination country, because the procedure is different. It's also happened for foreign workers in the Middle East, because some of the Middle East countries also allowing the people who are coming to Middle East countries using tourist visa or visit visa, and at the end can be switched to working permit. Now, I would like to move on the social and political impact of these foreign workers. In many countries, the foreign workers can rise and become social discourse. In Malaysia, for example, as already mentioned by Mahi, a lot of discussions because of the status of the foreign workers, whether documented or undocumented, legal or illegal, and then every single society, every single group began questionings about the role of the migrant workers. On the one hand, they are needed by companies, whether it is in the plantation sector or agriculture, manufacture, and even domestic sector. But on the other hand, there are also many problems arise because of the mismanagement the way they handle the foreign workers not properly. They become illegal. They're not illegal, but they are become illegal. When they come into the country, they provided with proper document, proper passport, proper contracts for at least 2 years. But after arriving in the country, because of several problems, several reasons, maybe treated not correctly, and then he or she run away, he or she tried to move from one company to another company and not properly arranged, then become illegal. So this kind of scheme become issues in the political and also social for the receiving country. And the questions, because of this many problems actually on the ground, how the country of origins and the destination country can cooperate each other. And this is actually not easy for everybody in the ASEAN. As I mentioned before, the regional arrangements not clearly and also can be applied directly because there is no law enforcement mechanism. While bilateral agreement, it is also not easy because not every single arrangements between country A and country B has its own agreement or specific agreement like memorandum of understanding. And if there is, but the applications and the law enforcement of the MOU not as expected. So at least another forum like communications, bilateral cooperation in specific sector, especially migrant workers, can be established and become a forum for bilateral communication between the country of origin and the destination country. Even though it is not easy, but we also see discussions much better compared to this no discussion at all, because we have some experience on that matters. The private company try to stay away from the problem, and then the employer just throwing away of the problem. And at the end, whether it is a government representative or NGO coming into and giving help to many problems. And now I would like to come to the summary of my presentations. The best way to overcome and try to find out the unemployment problem is the creating jobs, which is of course not easy during and after the pandemic. It needs time, of course, but every single country also trying to do in this scheme and its own path. And of course, economic development will become solutions, but still the economic disparity among the countries will result in the unemployment and also the push factor for the people who would like to find out jobs outside their own country. And the most important thing in solving the problem and seeing the problem is the way the country of origin and the country of the destination try to seek better ways, discuss and make arrangements, try to overcome what happens, at least trying to provide correct and proper data. because up to now, we have many problems about data itself. Some institutions say that the data of migrant workers in certain country is, let's say, 100,000. Another institutions, 150,000. It seems to us it's not that difficult actually, because every single person who are living and working in certain country, it should be recorded by the immigrations. But the problems, not every single immigration in every single country revealing this kind of data. Sharing those data, this also become one of the very challenging situations. And of course, with the help of NGO, and of course, with the role of the journalists, any problems, any delicate problems on the foreign workers situations, which is very prone to any kind of situation, can be explored further and can be tried to make it public, and then the governments, private sector, society, and also the foreign workers itself realize what is going on, where he or she would like to call and try to seek help, and also for the government especially can try to discuss further about the possibility to trying to find out the best solutions. And last, I would like to share about the Indonesian experience. Maybe Mahi and also our colleague in Kuala Lumpur have access about the data shelter in Indonesian embassy in Kuala Lumpur. There are hundreds every single day, hundreds of Indonesian foreign workers. Hundreds people, meaning hundreds problems. And already explaining by Mahi, during the COVID, there are thousands, tens of thousands Indonesian foreign workers in Peninsula, in Sabah, in Sarawak, left behind by any programs. Our representative in Kuala Lumpur, our Consulate General in Penang, in Kuching, in Sabah, they are struggling to share staple food, to distribute staple food in every corner of the country. It is very challenging and quite a touchy situation. And Singapore also, we have small shelter. They're taking care almost every day. The minimum is 50, the highest is 200. And of course, there are some NGOs in Singapore, in Malaysia, also helping solving the problem of the migrant workers. Because if every problem should be addressed by the government or its representative, we have limited capacity. And of course, with the cooperations between the governments, NGO, society, including the journalists, we can reveal further about the problems and try to work hand in hand to find out the best solutions, at least trying to make everybody knows about the real problems of the foreign workers. Thank you very much.